To take this particular image, we're going to use the body, the face, and we're going to use one arm. We can flip that same arm to animate it. So we're going to launch Flash. So we've used Adobe Fireworks as a tool to slice the image, and we could have done this in Flash if we wanted to. So yes, I mean, you could do it in either. And you could have also traced the image and redrawn it, using the likes of Illustrator or even Flash. So once Flash launches, okay, now I'm going to create a new file. Now I'm going to just dump all my images that I created or sliced onto the stage. Okay, now we have the face, we have the left arm, we have the body. So we can move all these around. And you can also place these on separate layers if you like. So I'm going to cut them and I'm going to place it on a separate layer, face. Oh, don't crash. Okay, so I've placed these on separate layers. So I've got the face, then I've got the body, and I'm going to label them. Then I've got the L arm, left arm, and I'm going to Control C and place it on a separate layer. And I'm going to now free transform and just flip it around. That's the right arm. R arm. And what I tend to generally do once you've done that, you can select all these layers. One thing that I generally tend to do is I may create an object, just an object here, and I may convert that into a symbol. So I'm going to convert this into a symbol. So sometimes you may have created something, then you think, geez, I should have had that nested. So the best approach is to convert that into a symbol. It's a movie clip, and I'll just call you character. Again, now I'm going to select all these layers. Select all these layers. And I'm going to do right click, copy frames, and double click onto the symbol that I created. And I can then paste them within. Let's go back again. Select them here, Control C, double click, then Control V there. So now I've got actually one object which is different to the original, so I don't need the original now. And I can also double click on this and I can move this to the center here and get rid of that circle I created. Just move to the center there, center of that crosshair. And now I have this symbol just on one layer. Now I could double click on this and I can do the individual tweening here. Yes, I have these on the same layer, so I would have to split them again. But you could see the thing I'm trying to cover is whenever you're animating an object, you need to make sure that there is no gap between the body and the face. So if I was rotating this, or this object or the face was moving, it generally needs to move at a pivot point of around there. So that's where it would move. So you could change that, where do you want that pivot point? The same thing with the arms. So you could change the pivot point. Now I can have the arms moving. So generally what I tend to do is I'll move it further in, so there's not going to be much of a gap. So now it just doesn't look great, does it? So make sure you tend to kind of overlap. You sort of move the arms further in, and at least it seems that it's part of the whole body. So the same thing on the other side. move the pivot point, and you can actually move it. So now we can have this object. You can have it animate or tween. You can also work on the eyes. Now you would obviously need to recreate these into vector images. What you can do is we can actually convert this, and something I've already covered before. Remember, you can trace the bitmap, and you can specify the color threshold. I'd say there's maybe around 10 colors, and we can click OK. Yeah, it wasn't so great. Let's try again. Let's try something smoother. Bitmap, trace. Let's do a minimum area of, say, 50. It's much smoother, but you can see it does remove it. So you would have to play around with that. But at least you have a vector image. You know, you can play around with this, and we could change it. So we could do all kinds of things with that. So that generally allows you to manipulate slice objects, and you can actually have them animate. So now we're going to, I'm going to keep this on the stage for the sake of it. I'm just going to undo that face to what it was. So I'm going to work on 3D effects. So let's just move this further down. So we're still on the on last week's chapter, which is chapter 5. So how do we actually rotate or sort of create a 3D? It's not really a 3D, you know, like you would see on 3D modeling tools, but we can actually have an object rotate around. So there is an icon on the left side, 3D rotation tool. You can click on that, and then what you will see on the object you're trying to rotate, you will see the X, Y, and Z. So now I can have this rotated. So if you do want to slightly sort of skew it or have it kind of go around, you can do that. So you can have that rotate one way or the other, and you can select. You can also have it go up and down. So that's what it means in terms of 3D, but it's not a fully 3D tool. Flash just does not let you do that. But you can see you can do all kinds of things here. So what we could do, so if we have this object, so let me just select it. I'm going to copy it, Control C. I've copied that object. Let me just zoom in. And I'm going to free transform. You know, I could skew it if I want to, or you could have a kind of a 3D rotation if you wanted to, rather than playing around with it. Now I could actually have this kind of like a reflection. I could even change the alpha on this if I wanted to. So I could go to colors, maybe have more of an alpha, and then we could even have filters. I could say let's have this more of a blur. So the 3D tool does do quite a few wonders. You can do all kinds of things with that. I could also, you know, do other things. I could have that as just a black image, just like a knockout effect. And you can get that under adjust colors. So we'll do a bit more on filters as we move forward, but generally that's what a 3D effects tool is. There is a deco tool you can actually have. Deco tool is lesson 7. Some of you may have played around with that. Let's see. Okay, so there's a deco. Okay, so you could select different examples you may want. So we could select. So it might be good in terms of a background if you wanted to have a background. So let's have a background. Let's change this color to lightning brush or say vine fill. So the deco tool. So use it as a background. I haven't really used it much. My work on, but you may want to think about, you know, where you may want to use that. So that's the 3D tool and the deco tool. Then there was a section on the buttons. So I'd like to cover buttons. Okay, so with buttons, what you may have a button, and you can have animation within that, if you like. So button is not just a hover over state. So let's create this button. So I'm going to right click, convert to symbol. It's going to be a button, and I'll just call it BTN. I'm going to double click on it. Now I have the up, over and down state. So insert keyframe. I'm going to change the color of the over state, change the color of the down state. I'll just change them to different colors for the time being. Insert keyframe. So now whenever anyone hovers over a button, we could have a particular animation. So the best way to do that is to just convert it into a symbol and change it to a movie clip. So right from scene 1, I've created a symbol, it's a button. Then we have the different states, over, down and hit. So whenever anyone hovers over this, I want this to, I don't know, change dimensions or do something. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to say convert symbol. And this time I'm going to give it the movie clip. And I'll just say BTN movie. And I'll change the registration point to be in the center. Click OK. Now when I double click in this, I'll see the timeline. It'll be slightly different to what the button was. And now I can say, let's have this, I don't know, let's have it shape morph or something. Create shape tween. So I'm going to create a shape tween, and I'm just going to change it slightly to that. Okay, so now when we play this, and we hover over it, rather than just having a static button, there's some kind of animation appearing there. So I can click on it, turns to red, or if I hover over it, it'll just keep cycling through that shape tween that I had. So once again, when you start up, you would create a button, right click, convert to symbol, make sure it's a button. Then when you double click, you see the different states, up, over, down and hit. So I want the animation to appear when anyone hovers over it. So what you then would do is you would go to the object, right click, and you would convert it to a symbol. Then make sure it's a movie clip. And then you double click on that, and we can see the hierarchy, scene 1, button, button, movie. And this is where we can add all kinds of stuff. I could put another object in here. I could just say circle, say square. Let's put a rectangle in there. Let's get rid of this. Change the color. And I could have a classic tween here maybe. It just flies across. So now when we play this, so we could have all kinds of things happening there. So we've just created a button there with having different effects on that. Something else that I wanted to actually point out was scenes. Most of you guys are creating storyboards with particular scenes, so you can actually create scenes within Flash. Some of you may have noticed that there is a edit scene. So you may have a number of different scenes here. So right now we have this object, just a button, and we may want to insert another scene. So I'm going to go to insert scene. So now I have a totally new scene. It's a blank plate, nothing there. So I'm going to draw, say, the sun on a different scene, and I'm going to have that tween create a motion tween. I'll just have it go across, kind of curve out a bit. Okay, that's what's going to happen on this. It's just going to do that. But what happened to the other scene that I just created? Now if we play it, did you see that? It did appear for a second. So if I go back to the other scene, I actually have two scenes, scene 1, scene 2. Now I'm going to go back to this first scene. I'm just going to remove this button. I don't want that button. I want maybe, I don't know, let's have a black hole here. You know, I want that black hole to be there for 65 frames. And right at the beginning I want some kind of text which is going to say hey. So I'm going to type in some text which is going to say hey. And I'm going to create a motion tween here too. You know, it's just going to come across. That's it. Now if we play it all now, we'll see hey comes in. When that finishes, the other scene pops in. So now when you're planning your animation, which is going to be 20-25 seconds, you could break it down. So this particular movie here is running at 24 frames per second. So generally 100, 150 frames, you could say, you know, this is going to be my first scene, 125 frames, which is 5 seconds. So you could, it's easier to manage, as you can see, to manage 125 frames on one scene. Now when that finishes, it'll automatically go to the next scene. Does that make sense? So it's going to be easier for you to create it rather than having 500 odd frames. You know, you're going to come to a point, you're going to be somewhere down here. Now if you're editing towards the end of your animation, it'll be far more time consuming. And you could jump between scenes. I could go to scene 2. Let me add another scene. Let's go to insert scene. Let's say now we have 3 scenes. Here's third scene. So I'm going to say, no, the end. Let's just have a quick tween here. Okay, now if we were to play this, so I could just stretch this out to say, I don't know, 100 frames or so. So I'm going to do all the scenes to around 100 frames. Actually, let's just add 100 frames may be more manageable. And let's throw in another object down here, insert keyframe. I'm going to have just a black circle there for the sake of it. So I'm just quickly doing that. Let's go to scene 1. Now scene 1 I just had hey. You know, 65 frames we could keep it there. Now if we were to run this, you know, hey comes here, and then we have the circle, the black circle comes in the end. So try to use scenes, they're going to be far more effective in terms of planning for your for a larger project, you know, 20-25 seconds. Even a 10-second movie, you could break it down. Yes?
I really missed how you create that second scene.
So all you do is you just go to insert scene. That creates as many scenes, and then you can just jump to any particular scene. You know, rather than having to find the right frame. Then you're going to click on the frame, you're going to say, geez, it's further down. So you may want to maybe restrict it to 50 frames each, you know, 2 seconds each. That depends, once again, how your movie is going to be you know, blocked into what kind of structure. So base it off your storyboard. So you may have, I don't know, 6-7 different sketches, and those could be associated to different scenes. Any questions on that, the scenes? Any questions on that? Any questions?